When we begin to move from the waking world into the quiet territory of sleep, we step across one of the strangest frontiers the human mind knows. It is a place between being and not being, between the sharp presence of consciousness and the soft immersion of dreams. This fleeting passage, which scientists call the hypnagogic state, is like a doorway. We do not stay in it long, though it often feels longer than it is. It is the hush before the song of sleep begins. Yet in those delicate minutes, something extraordinary happens. Thoughts are reshaped, senses are confused, images appear from nowhere, and the ordinary laws of waking life seem to bend as if the world around us were melting into something unknown. Many people experience this state every single night without thinking about it. You lay down on your bed, watch your thoughts wander. Slowly, your awareness slips backward and forward. And before you know it, you are gone into sleep. But hidden inside this ordinary and forgettable passage is a world of mysteries. Imagine yourself lying in bed in a dark room. Your eyes are closed, but they flutter under the eyelids as your mind softens. At first, thoughts run like a stream, tasks from the day, ideas, concerns, soft fragments of memory. Then, as your muscles loosen, these thoughts twist into patterns of half-images, colors, voices, strange combinations. The sound of a conversation half-remembered becomes the whisper of someone unseen. The feeling of weight across your chest turns into a dream of holding something heavy. You breathe slowly, deeply, and suddenly you slip for a moment into an uncanny sense of falling. You stir, your body jerks, your eyes open briefly, and then you settle again. This little story is familiar, and it is not rare. Researchers estimate that more than 60% of people experience odd events in this transitional state. These are not signs of disorder or madness, but the natural tricks of a brain crossing the line into sleep. What is remarkable is how old the curiosity about this state is. In the 19th century, thinkers and scientists began to study it as a frontier in the understanding of consciousness. They noticed that when people fall asleep, they often report visions, jolts, or even the voice of someone calling them. Instead of dismissing these as imagination, early researchers began to measure and describe them. It was the first attempt to see the passage into sleep not just as an empty space but as a whole world worthy of discovery. What they were exploring is what today we call hypnagogia, the shadowland where wakefulness dissolves into sleep. Why does the brain choose this moment to play tricks on us? The answer lies in how it gradually turns off. Your brain is never a simple switch, one moment entirely awake, the next moment gone. It works more like a city, shutting down piece by piece. In one area the sounds slowly dim. In another, vision fades. In yet another, memory begins to shut its doors. But rarely do these systems all go quiet at the exact same time. And so, in the overlap, you can hear things that are not really there. You can see things though your eyes are closed. You can feel your body twitch as if guarding against danger. These are the ordinary miracles of a brain tumbling gradually into night. Some cultures have long described this moment as a mystical passage. Ancient writers spoke of it as stepping through a veil between worlds, and artists have tried to capture it in paint. To be almost asleep is to be both here and elsewhere. You are half in control, half surrendered. You are aware enough to notice things, but dazed enough to be puzzled by them. That puzzle is what makes it feel so uncanny. Our normal sense of order fails. Thinking is no longer steady but full of leaps and accidents. A face appears before our eyes. Words echo with no mouth behind them. A sudden sense of movement pounces upon us. The brain, in the act of shutting down, still has energy firing in odd directions, causing visions that are as real as any waking sight. The appeal to scientists is obvious. If the brain can create hallucinations when we are slipping into sleep, then perhaps it reveals something about how fragile the boundary of consciousness really is. For psychologists in the 19th century, this state was a testing ground for theories of perception. They wondered if dreams are built in the same way, sparked by small misfires of thought. They measured the timing and the sensations, though without the modern machines we now have. By the early 20th century, hypnagogic experiences had been catalogued in many journals, each describing in detail what people saw, heard, or felt just as they dozed off. But what makes it so gripping for ordinary people is not the science alone. It is the personal familiarity. Think of the sudden moment when you feel you are tumbling into a void. Or the faint sound of your name called in a room where no one is present. Think of the flickering shadows that move beneath closed eyes, shapes that seem alive though you know they cannot be real. These are not rare oddities. They are some of the most common and striking parts of falling asleep. Knowing that most humans share them can be a comfort. You are not the only one whose mind plays surprising games in the twilight before rest. The hook is simple: why would the mind do this to itself? Why would it conjure illusions of sound and light? Why would it jolt the body awake just when it is sinking down? One explanation is that the nervous system is checking, one last time, for threats. Our ancestors, falling asleep in wild places, may have needed that last protective mechanism, a sudden jerk or false alarm to keep them safe. Another is that the brain is dealing with memory fragments. The half-heard voices are simply traces of conversations. The falling sensation is just the body recalibrating its balance. These are ordinary processes, but they feel extraordinary. We are creatures of both science and story, so through history people have told tales about these moments. In folklore, the sudden jerk meant that the soul was nearly captured by spirits. The shadowy vision meant a visitor was present in the room. The phantom voice might have been a message from the beyond. Even today, when we know the neurological basis, many feel something spiritual about it. Falling asleep is a miniature death and rebirth each night. No wonder the brain surrounds it with such a sense of mystery. As the episode continues, we will explore these events in depth, the crashing sounds heard in silence, the jolts as if falling into voids, the visions of people and shapes that do not exist. Each deserves its own quiet study. But before we step into them, it is enough to rest for a while in the doorway itself, noticing how the brain slowly mutters its last words of wakefulness as sleep begins to draw us downward. The hypnagogic state is more than a curiosity, it is the threshold of human experience. To linger here is like standing at the border of two worlds, half alive to both. And so, as you listen now, perhaps you feel some of its pull. Perhaps as the words move slowly you notice your own thoughts drifting, settling, loosening from their grip upon the day. That is natural. The very act of paying attention to sleep invites sleep itself. If stray images cross your closed eyes, let them. If sounds arise from nowhere, recognize them as the playful sparks of a mind unwinding. Let them come and go as clouds over the quiet evening of consciousness. Tonight, as every night, you pass through this space, and in passing you join billions of others who cross the same mysterious bridge. When you first arrive at the threshold of sleep, the world tilts in mysterious ways. You drift between waking life and the deep waters of slumber, and very often, in that fragile state, the body reminds you of its presence with a sudden and startling motion. Without warning, you sense yourself plunging downward, as though the ground has vanished beneath your feet. Your heart might leap, your breath might catch, and your arms or legs might twitch violently enough to wake you. For a moment it feels as if you have fallen from a cliff or stumbled into empty space. Then you open your eyes, safe in your bed, and wonder why your body betrayed you with such a terrifying illusion. Almost everyone knows this sensation. It is one of the most common and most puzzling tricks of the drifting state between wakefulness and sleep. The sudden jerk of a limb or the full body convulsion that comes with the feeling of falling is not a random accident. Scientists call these spasms hypnic jerks, and they are as old as humanity itself. When you relax into sleep, your muscles release tension. Your body is loosening its grip, preparing for the stillness of the night. But the brain, still partially alert, sometimes misreads this relaxation as danger. To a mind wired by millions of years of evolution, muscles letting go can seem suspiciously like death. In response, it sends signals to kick, to jolt, to flinch, as though it were rescuing you from disaster. What might feel like an inconvenient spasm while you lie in a soft bed was, long ago, a reflex that may have helped our distant ancestors cling to safety. Imagine ancient humans sleeping lightly in trees, their survival dependent on staying balanced as they drifted into half-consciousness. A twitch at the right moment could prevent a fall that meant injury or death. The body remembers across ages. The sensation is deeply unsettling because it confuses two realities. In the comfort of your room, you are not falling, yet your brain convinces you that you are plummeting into voids of infinite depth. The message is urgent: wake up, something is wrong. In most cases it lasts only a fraction of a second, yet within that brief spark is an entire world of panic and shock. Some people laugh it off. Others carry with them a kind of dread, especially when it happens night after night. Those who are under stress, who have consumed too much caffeine, or who carry fatigue in their muscles are often more vulnerable. The brain in such conditions teeters more violently on the edge of sleep and does not fully trust the body to slip quietly into stillness. To understand the phenomenon, you must envision the brain not as a singular decision-maker but as a network of different systems negotiating with each other. As one part slows and says, "Let us sleep," another part insists, "But what about threats?" The body is in the middle, pulled back and forth, caught between surrender and defense. Hypnic jerks are the manifestation of this argument. The convulsion is a compromise, a sudden cry of caution before finally giving up and allowing the larger tide of sleep to sweep in. It is like the house checking its locks one last time before night closes in. People who suffer frequent and strong versions of these shocks sometimes describe them with vivid images. Some say they see themselves stepping off a ledge. Others feel they are slipping down a stairway. Some jump as if tripping over nothing, limbs shooting into the air. One person might report that they have fallen into a pit, only to awaken in sweat with arms outstretched. Another recounts dreaming of a collapsing floor, of riding an elevator that suddenly breaks apart, of tumbling through darkness without end. What is fascinating is that the mind often fills the moment of spasm with imagery. The falling feeling is more than a sensation, it is fused into half-dreams, little vignettes that exist for a split second and vanish into nothing. These stories do not come from the outside world but from the brain's own echo chamber, producing a flash of narrative to explain the body's lurch. Science has probed into these moments with electrodes and careful observation. Studies reveal that during these spasms, muscle activity spikes, and electrical bursts ripple across the motor cortex, the part of the brain that commands movement. The sleeping brain unintentionally sabotages itself with these bursts, turning inward sensations into outward, full-body reactions. As researchers watch, they see that the line between consciousness and unconsciousness is jagged, not smooth. There is no perfect switch. Sleep arrives in fits and starts, and hypnic jerks are one of the most visible signs. They appear more often during light sleep stages, usually in the first hour of lying down, when you are still within the reach of waking thought. Despite the unsettling feel, hypnic jerks are considered harmless. Doctors reassure patients that these violent plunges are part of normal sleep physiology. Yet, when paired with anxiety, they can create a loop. You jitter awake, heart pounding, afraid of falling again. Then, as you try again to drift off, the fear itself makes another spasm more likely. For some people, the cycle repeats until exhaustion becomes the only path to stillness. This pattern has been noted in clinical records through history, cases where the brain, frightened of its own reflexes, resists the very peace of sleep it longs for. Throughout centuries, before science offered rational explanations, cultures gave spiritual or symbolic meaning to the falling dream. Some traditions whispered that to fall in sleep dreams meant that the soul was being tugged toward the underworld. Others believed it to be a punishment for sins or a sign that one's spirit was vulnerable. There are even ancient religious texts describing sleep jerks as moments of demonic attack, a last effort of hostile forces to catch a person before they sank beyond the world of vigilance. While these interpretations differ across cultures, they reveal how universal the sensation is. Humans everywhere, across every age, have been startled awake by sudden plunges, and everywhere they have sought meaning in them. The element of fear in these events is hard to ignore. Our bodies are finely tuned survival machines. They respond most strongly to the sensation of falling because falling is one of the oldest dangers to creatures that walk upright, climb, and live in precarious environments. A stumble, a drop, a slip each could mean injury or death. And so the mind reacts to even the illusion of a drop with maximum alarm. Heartbeat accelerates. Muscles seize. Breath gulps into the lungs. This ancient program has not left us, even when we are padded by soft beds and thick blankets. Evolution still sings its warning song deep in our nerves. Modern life adds new pressures. Those who drink coffee late, who push themselves into sleepless nights of work, who live with the silent toll of stress often report more frequent jolts. The nervous system under such strain becomes hyperactive, unwilling to lie down quietly. Some people find that simple rituals can diminish the effect: stretching, gentle breathing, resisting the last cup of tea, or the flashing light of screens before bedtime. These small practices reassure the body, telling it no last defense is needed, sleep is safe. Others turn to soothing background sounds, music, or slow voices guiding them across the threshold of slumber, until eventually the reflexes quiet themselves. But do not mistake these jerks only for nuisances. Some researchers suggest they are windows into the relationship between mind and body. They reveal that sleep is not a passive event. It is an active negotiation, a process of continual dialogue between muscles and neurons, between vigilance and surrender. Hypnic jerks remind us there is no clean dividing line in the mind. Consciousness is not a single state, it is a dance, tumbling through gradients and contrasts. It is also worth noting that the sensation of falling, as unpleasant as it might feel, can occasionally give way to peace. Once you recognize it as harmless, you may learn to ride it instead of fearing it. On some nights the sudden drop becomes not a shock but a release, as if the body has performed its last confession of energy before it finally allows stillness to take over. What once felt like a terrifying plunge begins to feel like a rite of passage into the night. In accepting the fall, one accepts sleep itself. Consider how this moment mirrors other passages in life. When you trust deeply, you surrender some control. When you step onto a boat, it rocks beneath you, and you choose to believe it will carry you across the water. When a parent holds a child, the child can fall to sleep only through trust. The hypnic jerk is a trial of trust between body and mind. It interrupts to ask, "Are you safe? Are you certain? Do you dare to let go?" And when at last you answer yes, the fall ceases to be alarming. It drifts into the larger motion of dreams. Stories from individuals paint the phenomenon vividly. One woman reports nearly every night she dreams of stepping off the last stair and finding nothing beneath her foot. She awakes in sweat, heart racing. A man tells of dozing on long train rides where over and over he imagines himself toppling onto the floor of the carriage. Children often laugh about it, telling parents they dreamt of leaping and landing badly. What unites these accounts is that each person immediately recognizes the sensation although none can control it. Whether at 5 years old or at 70, hypnic jerks catch us off guard. For some listeners, the recognition alone grants comfort. You are not alone in this experience. More than 70% of people report some version of it. If you have felt yourself falling as you sink into sleep, you belong to a giant community of dreamers startled by their own nerves. You may remind yourself of this truth the next time the sensation grips you. This is not illness, not possession, not the world ending. It is your brain, faithful through generations, practicing its routine of care. So here, as you continue to settle deeper into the rhythm of listening, you may feel your own muscles sway and tremble. Perhaps a leg twitches, perhaps an arm adjusts itself, perhaps for a fleeting instant you experience the sensation of slipping into a void. Do not resist it. Welcome it for what it is, a natural reminder that you are on the cusp of surrendering yourself to rest. If in that falling you feel fear, breathe gently and let reassurance rise. It is only the guardian reflex of your ancient kin. It will pass, and after it passes, the rest is deeper and calmer. Every night, billions of human beings around the world jerk in their beds as they fall into sleep, all of them conducting the same unconscious ritual. Think of the sheer universality of it. From the earliest tribes huddling together under the open sky, to monks asleep in stone temples, to modern workers slipping into sleep after long days beneath glowing screens, each has felt the invisible hand of falling. This dance of muscle and nerve, of shock and relief, connects us across centuries. It is a memory not of one person but of our entire species. If you imagine the timeline of life, you can see this reflex traveling backward thousands of years, into the wild where falling meant death, where vigilance meant life. The jerk is the trace of that battle inscribed into our nerves. It survives today like a fossil inside of us, proof of ancient nights survived by twitching awake. And strangely, instead of being erased by time, it remains consistent, uniting billions in the same nightly lurch. With this understanding, the next time you are thrust awake by the feeling of falling, you might view it differently. Not as an enemy but as an ally long out of place. Its alarms are outdated, but its intentions are protective. It watches even when you are drifting away, determined to bring you back if danger were near. Having survived into the age of safe beds and roofs, it is like an ancient soldier still standing guard at a gate long abandoned. One can even thank it silently before returning to rest. And so, as your breathing deepens and the words slip slowly across your thoughts, picture the night not as an enemy but as a companion. Sleep asks you to let go, and the hypnic jerk is the final question before you surrender. When the question comes, answer yes. Allow yourself to fall, allow yourself to be carried. It is precisely in that surrender that the border gives way, and the land of dreams finally opens. When the first plunge into sleep has passed, and the jerk of falling gives way to a calmer descent, there is another experience that can come, no less startling and no less mysterious. Imagine lying still, body heavy with the surrender of near sleep, eyes closed, breathing even, when suddenly, in the silence of your own mind, a sound erupts. It is not faint and gentle like a whisper. It is loud, ferocious, like an explosion echoing across mountains or a sudden clap of thunder crashing through the night. For an instant, it shakes the very center of your awareness. You open your eyes but the room is still. The walls have not trembled, no doors have slammed, no lightning has split the sky. It is only you, alone in the darkness. And yet the sound was too real, too clear, too sharp to dismiss as imagination. This is the strange phenomenon known in medical language as the exploding head syndrome, though the name itself is far more violent than the experience it describes. Despite its terrifying appearance, it is harmless. The sound is not produced in the outer world, but inside the brain itself, triggered during the transition between wakefulness and sleep. For those who have felt it, the memory lingers with a chill, an immense boom, the crack of fireworks, the slam of a gun, even the blast of cymbals or the rolling thunder of a storm. Some describe it not as sound alone but as a sensation vibrating through the skull, a sudden surge of electricity, like a spark. Others say it arrives with a burst of light behind their closed eyes, a flash that is gone as quickly as it appears. To live through this is to witness just how convincing the mind can be when it conjures illusions. You hear with nothing around you. You witness an event that no one else shares. If another person lies beside you, their eyes closed, they hear nothing. They turn in sleep while you are wide awake, wondering if something shattered, if something inside your body broke open. In truth, nothing has broken. The brain, while shutting down, sometimes misfires, allowing sensory systems to overlap and create a phantom event. Neurons that should be quiet flare into activity, producing a perception of overwhelming force. The sound you hear is a kind of hallucination, sharp, complete, and utterly convincing, though without cause. Scientists studying the matter believe it occurs during the abrupt dampening of brain activity, particularly in the networks responsible for integrating sound and sensation. As the body relaxes, the auditory system may flicker in confusion, releasing a burst instead of fading quietly. What you experience is the echo of your own neural machinery closing the gates for the night. The boom does not come from the outer world, it is the last spark of internal electricity. The experience can be terrifying not only because of the noise but because of the timing. It often happens just as you are about to step fully into sleep, a moment when your defenses are already thin, when you are vulnerable and expect only peace. As with hypnic jerks, these internal explosions follow no rule of fairness. Some people may experience them only once in life, a single night startled with the sound of a phantom gunshot. Others experience them again and again, sometimes every week, sometimes nightly during stressful periods. The unpredictability adds to the fear. Anxiety feeds the cycle, amplifying it, for now the mind not only expects rest but anticipates the sudden blast. A person may lie awake worrying about hearing it, only to trigger it by the very worry they cannot abandon. Sleep then becomes not a refuge but an arena of dread. Within reports collected across the world, there is a striking range of descriptions. One person says it sounded like metal crashing against stone. Another swears it was a bomb exploding in the distance. A third describes it as a swelling hiss that rose like steam until it detonated in their head with unbearable force. Still others recount music ringing, choruses of voices shouting, bells, glass shattering, or the violent rush of wind collapsing into silence. Each story is unique, but what ties them together is the sheer reality of the sound. It is never muffled or doubtful. It is always crisp, immediate, immense. Historical records show fascination with this phenomenon as far back as the 19th century, when unusual sleep experiences were first catalogued. Patients wrote astonished letters to doctors, explaining the noise that no one else heard. Some believed they were cursed or haunted. Some considered it an omen of illness or the approach of death. Without scientific understanding, the terror only deepened. Today science gives different comfort. The syndrome is real, but it carries no danger. No damage marks the brain. No explosion has occurred. It is the harmless misfiring of a system halfway into silence. Yet the harmlessness does not erase the mystery. Why such volume? Why such convincing force? Why the variance from thunderclap to melody? Why do some hear a boom while others hear music? These remain questions researchers continue to study. One theory suggests it depends on which networks flare. If the neurons that store memory of music are activated, you may hear the echo of songs. If those connected to threat are triggered, you may hear shattering sounds. The brain plays its private concerts, tailored by the person's own experiences. There are cultural echoes as well. In certain traditions, the instant blast before sleep was taken as a summons from spirits. Thunder in the head was said to be a warning from beyond, or the sign of a soul leaving the body with too much haste. In other places, it was seen as prophecy, the sound of weapons foretelling conflict. Despite differences in interpretation, cultures agreed it was not to be ignored. The lack of an external source only deepened the sense that something profound and supernatural was taking place. Even now, people confronted with this phenomenon often reach for mystical explanations. For how can the mind alone produce a sound that shakes you as no real event has? But perhaps there is beauty in this strangeness. The brain, an organ of tissue and pulse, is also a theatre, able to produce plays of light and sound within itself. In the darkness of a bedroom, with the world utterly silent, the mind can thunder with a storm. In the hush of midnight, a single head can explode with a fanfare of instruments no orchestra could match. This is not insanity, it is the hidden richness of the brain unbound from the rigid structures of waking perception. We spend our days filtering out the noise, arranging inputs into neat meanings. But at night, the filters loosen, the networks falter, and behind the curtain is revealed a wild machinery that does not require the world to function. It can conjure sensations from nothing. Some individuals grow accustomed to these internal explosions and no longer fear them. They recognize the phantom noise for what it is, and they let it pass. A few even anticipate it. The boom becomes not an interruption but a signal that sleep is near, a strange kind of lullaby that says you are crossing the divide. For others, the best relief comes in ritual, breathing exercises, soft lighting, calm narration like this, ambient music, or the presence of nature sounds to soothe the mind. Each technique works not against the brain but with it, guiding the nerves toward silence, assuring them there is no threat. In this way, the phenomenon sheds light not only on the fragility of our senses but on the resilience of our minds. Even when startled, we can learn to adapt, to fold the experience into the larger tapestry of sleep. Just as the falling jerk can be accepted as a natural reflex, so too can the phantom explosion. Both are markers of the beautiful, unpredictable complexity of human consciousness. They remind us that sleep is not a switch but an odyssey, full of hazards and wonders, where the landscapes are made not of earth but of thought itself. Consider, too, how these internal sounds resemble the experiences at the boundary of dreams. When you dream, you can hear voices that are not present, thunder that does not shake the ground, music that no instrument plays. Exploding head syndrome is like a dream cutting early into the waking world, a fragment of dream bursting before you are fully asleep. The boundary is thinner than we think. One step too soon, the dream shatters into waking life, leaving you bewildered by its intensity. If you find yourself haunted by these noises, recall how shared they are. Studies indicate that between 10 and 15% of people have experienced exploding head syndrome at least once in their lives. That is millions upon millions of dreamers around the planet who have heard a bomb in silence, a gun in stillness, thunder without clouds. You join a great collective, bound not by choice but by the fragile magic of consciousness. And while science reassures us it is harmless, the experience still carries poetry, the skull as stage, the brain as musician, the night itself as composer. So as you listen now, if you notice even the faintest echo inside your mind, know that it is one possibility among many in the endless spectrum of sleep's secret performances. The body does not betray you, it entertains you with the strangeness of its transitions. You are not dying when you hear the boom. You are not cursed when you hear the thunder. You are simply, deeply, wonderfully human, caught in a moment when the brain reveals how strange it can truly be. And as the sound fades, you drift further, knowing that the silence after such eruption is deeper, and the night that awaits you is calmer. What seemed like an explosion was only the opening note of your journey, a reminder that the world of sleep is never empty, never dull, never ordinary. It is a realm full of wonders so subtle and powerful that they feel more real than reality itself. As you drift deeper into the currents of night, past the sudden fall of the body and the strange echo of thunder in silence, another threshold approaches, one far stranger and more intimate. The quiet of the room enfolds you, your body heavy upon the bed, your breathing balanced and serene, yet your mind begins to stir with visions that have no place in the waking world. Behind your closed eyes shapes move, shadows gather, and lights appear as if painted against a canvas that is not there. You know that you are still awake, you can sense the weight of your blanket, you can hear the hush of the atmosphere around you, and yet, before you lies an unfolding play of patterns, images, and figures. This is not ordinary dreaming, for the line of awareness has not disappeared. You hover with half-conscious clarity while impossible sights drift before you. It begins subtly, with abstract colors swirling against the darkness. Flecks of light may blink like distant stars. Threads of glowing lines may twist into spirals, turning and stretching with each breath you take. At times the colors pulse in rhythm with your beating heart, as though your very pulse is projecting visions into the mind's eye. Then the abstract grows concrete. A face appears, shifting and melting back into haze. A figure rises, ambiguous and unsettling, perhaps standing at the edge of your perception, waiting. The deeper you fall into this state, the more the visions form themselves into lifelike detail. People may stand beside your bed, though none are real. Architecture may rise and collapse. Landscapes may appear for the briefest moments, populated by phantom inhabitants. The strangeness of these hallucinations is not in their grip on reality alone but in the peculiar awareness that accompanies them. Unlike a dream, where you are swept along unaware until you awaken, here you remain partially alert. You may even think to yourself, "I am hallucinating." And yet that recognition does not dispel the image. The phantom remains, persistent, hovering just inches away from the truth of the world. The eyes, though closed or half open in darkness, obey commands from within rather than from without. And when it fades, you lie struck by how convincing it felt, how impossible it seems that it was only inside your head. In this mysterious gap between wakefulness and sleep, the senses do not fully obey their boundaries. The visual system, loosed from external anchors, begins to invent of its own accord. But it is not only vision that can be deceived. Some people, upon entering this threshold, hear voices murmuring as if from another room. These voices might whisper their name or engage in conversations that dissolve the moment attention is given. Others experience the rustle of footsteps in the hall, a knock upon the wall, the shifting of furniture, or the creak of a door. None of it exists, yet it arrives with crisp immediacy. Still others feel the touch of something unseen, a hand grazing the arm, the weight of another body sitting upon the bed, the brush of breath against their cheek though no one is near. For many, these hallucinations carry an element of unease. Faces may distort grotesquely, shadows may swell to monstrous form, figures may hover too close with eyes too sharp. The sense of presence becomes threatening rather than soothing. Fear pours through the body because at this threshold you retain just enough awareness to believe danger might be real. If fully dreaming, you might not question it. If fully awake, you would dismiss it. But in the in-between state, you are vulnerable, with judgment half asleep and fears amplified. The amygdala, the brain's center for fear, is still active. It reacts with intensity, flooding the body with warning, as if saying, "Beware," though there is nothing to beware of. Throughout history such visions have been interpreted in countless ways. In ancient cultures they were taken as visitations from spirits or ancestors. A shadow lingering at the bedside was not illusion but the return of one who had lived before. In medieval times, the images were called demons, pressing upon the vulnerable sleeping soul. Artists painted such encounters as nightmares embodied, monstrous creatures crouching upon dreamers' chests. In more modern times, psychologists studied them as the natural illusions of a brain weaving random neural sparks into recognizable patterns. Today we know them as hypnagogic hallucinations, among the most vivid and uncanny of human inner experiences. And yet even knowing this, those who encounter them are still often unsettled, as if knowledge can touch the mind but not the pulse of instinctive fear. What makes these hallucinations so diverse across individuals is the deeply personal nature of the brain's memory reserves. The images are drawn from your own store of impressions. One person might see faces, because their mind is tuned by years of recognizing and remembering human forms. Another might see glowing geometries, each line a fragment from glimpses of lights or screens. Some hear the voices of loved ones, because their emotional bonds resonate more strongly than anything else in the nervous system. The hallucination is shaped like clay from your life itself, molded by personal memory into something simultaneously alien and familiar. There are accounts from those who embrace these visions instead of fearing them. They lie calmly, eyes closed, watching the parade of strange illuminations as though it were a private cinema. They may let their thoughts drift, taking delight in how shapes form and reform. In certain traditions of meditation, practitioners even cultivate this state deliberately, sitting still at the edge of drowsiness to witness the natural art show of their inner mind. They describe fractal colors and figures blossoming without will or control, an endless fountain of creativity hidden beneath consciousness. To them, the hallucinations are not warnings but gifts. But others endure the darker side. Consider the person who sees a shadowed figure leaning over the bed, whose shape is distorted and whose gaze seems cold. Half awake, the person cannot dismiss it as dream. Terror floods them, muscles lock, and though they open their eyes they are uncertain whether the phantom has vanished or remains. The memory may haunt them for days. In sleep clinics, such testimonies are common. The patient reports fearing ghosts or intruders, when in fact it was the brain producing its own intrusions. These stories reveal how easily the line between inner and outer is blurred when consciousness flickers. These hallucinations also remind us of the fragile architecture of perception itself. What we call reality is stitched together from signals interpreted by the brain. We believe we see and hear the world directly, but in truth we depend upon an interpreter inside our skull, one that sometimes misfires. If it is capable of presenting faces, voices, and touch entirely without cause at the edge of sleep, then perhaps the solidity of all perception is more fragile than we assume. Dreams and hallucinations are less different from waking life than they appear. They are points along a spectrum of interpretation. Research studying the phenomenon finds that when people enter this state, regions of the brain associated with imagery are unusually active. The occipital lobes, responsible for vision, send signals without external input. The auditory cortex delivers phantom sound. The somatosensory system conjures false sensations of touch. All of these emerge at once, overlapping, because the brain is not shutting down cleanly but flickering between modes. In the gaps, the illusions thrive. Scientists reassure that the body is safe, that no real external event is taking place, but the brain, in its stubborn autonomy, insists upon conjuring them anyway. Those who grow accustomed to these experiences sometimes learn to guide them, slipping into what is known as lucid dreaming, where awareness within the hallucination deepens until one can move into dream with partial control. But even without such skill, many come to recognize the hallucinations as markers on the path to rest. Over time the fear weakens. One learns to acknowledge the faces, the colors, the phantom voices as temporary companions, guides toward the deeper unconscious. Instead of foes, they become messengers reminding us of the richness that hides inside ordinary minds. Yet the darkness holds power. Human beings are creatures of story, and whenever such vivid illusions appear, we cannot resist weaving meaning around them. The shadow becomes an intruder. The voice becomes a spirit. The colors become visions. In this way, hypnagogic hallucinations have fueled myths, painted art, written scripture, and birthed legends of demons and angels. What was only the firing of neurons becomes the drama of gods. Each century transforms the same universal experience into new tales, and in those tales we see evidence of how profoundly these hallucinations touch us. When you lie in bed tonight and perhaps glimpse a dart of light behind your closed eyes, remember this. You are in good company, alongside countless generations who have seen the impossible at the threshold of night. When a figure hovers in your half-dreams, do not assume madness or invasion. Recognize it as the deep machinery of imagination, alive and restless inside you. The brain is not content with darkness, it paints even upon the void. Let the images pass across you like clouds across a twilight sky. They do not last. They cannot harm. They exist only for a heartbeat, then vanish. And if it frightens you, allow the fright to soften. Breathe gently, remind yourself, this, too, is part of being human. Far from pathology, it is woven into the fabric of normal sleep. When the vision comes, acknowledge it, and then allow your awareness to sink deeper. Beyond these hallucinations, the full ocean of dreams waits, calmer, vast, and forgiving. Perhaps at this very moment, as you listen, faint sparks of imagery flicker at the edges of your consciousness. Perhaps colors you cannot name move in the dark. Perhaps a shadow stands quietly in your imagination, neither friend nor foe, only presence. Let it be what it is. No alarm is needed. You are safe, cradled in the ordinary mystery of the human mind. As these phantoms parade and dissolve, you draw ever closer to full rest, each hallucination just another ripple upon the waters carrying you into night. Thus the journey continues. First the body jerks, then the head explodes with phantom thunder, and then, as you move further still, faces and figures manifest, touching the edge of reality and vanishing before they can be grasped. These are not interruptions but steps upon the path, guideposts on the strange and wondrous highway that bridges waking and sleep. The longer you travel it, the more marvelous it becomes, until at last you surrender fully, leaving hallucination behind for dream. And in that surrender, peace is found, a peace that arises not in spite of the strangeness, but because of it. As you sink further into the ocean of sleep, where images flicker and vanish and the ordinary senses rearrange themselves into illusions, another experience rises, subtle at first, then profound in its ability to unsettle the heart. You lie still, and though your body is heavy as stone, though your breathing is steady, though your mind is dipping toward the deeper tides of unconsciousness, a feeling begins to grow. It is not a picture, not a sound, not an explosion of light, but something simpler and more primal. You sense that you are not alone. The room may be dark and silent, and yet somewhere inside the nerves of your own being, you feel proximity. A presence, invisible but undeniable, seems to stand nearby. It can hover at the corner of the bed, it can weigh at the foot of the blanket, it can linger in the corner of the room. There may be no sound, no image, nothing you can describe with clarity, only the heavy certainty that someone or something exists with you, watching. The sensation is raw, immediate, charged with instinct. For many, it is unbearable. The air seems thick. The atmosphere presses. The body grows tense even as it is paralyzed by near sleep, unable to move under the gravity of the imagined companion. This feeling of another presence is one of the most astonishing quirks of the hypnagogic state. Unlike a hallucination that shows you faces or lights, here there may be nothing to see. Unlike phantom thunder, there may be nothing to hear. It is subtler, stranger, as if a sixth sense is briefly activated, insisting that space is occupied. The paradox is that rationally, in the waking self, you know you are alone. But the deeper self, built from instincts honed over millions of years, raises alarm. Alone in the dark may mean danger. Vulnerability invites vigilance. Some sudden whisper of the nervous system, half in waking, half in dream, spins that vigilance into the conviction that another being is close. Many accounts of this presence are terrifying. People speak of an intruder who stalks their room, silent but overwhelming. Others claim to sense a malevolent entity, crouched in shadow, staring with hunger. Some speak of an amorphous weight upon their chest, as though the figure has climbed upon them and refuses to give space. Some even feel the breath of it, a muted proximity that pulls at every vein of terror. Yet it is nearly always silent. Unlike the noisy blast of phantom thunder, the presence disturbs not with volume, but with the absence of its stillness so heavy it becomes unbearable. To understand this sensation, scientists turn again to the structures of the brain, particularly the amygdala, that region buried deep within, attuned to threat and danger. The amygdala does not sleep as readily as other parts. Even when the imagination is painting hallucinations, the amygdala stands watch. When it is activated without cause in the hypnagogic state, it floods the body with dread. The rational self cannot interpret why, so the mind invents meaning. Danger must mean someone is near. The sense of presence is born from this mismatch, primal instinct flares and imagination supplies its shadow. Sleep paralysis is often tied to this phenomenon. When bodies remain motionless in early sleep or as they awaken from dream, the inability to move collides with the feeling of danger, amplifying the conviction that something else must be present. Cultures across the world have explained this in myth and legend. In Scandinavia, the old tales speak of the mare, a spirit who sits upon chests at night, suffocating dreamers. In Japan there is kanashibari, the binding condition in which ghosts hold you down during sleep. In many countries, tales of witches, demons, or shadow people have their roots in this universal sensation. Across centuries, the language shifts but the core remains. To begin to sleep is sometimes to feel you are joined by another who does not exist. But why does the presence so rarely feel gentle? Why not a guardian spirit, a friend, a loved one standing vigil? There are rare cases where people sense benevolent figures, warm influences, or angelic guardians. Yet far more frequently the presence is hostile, threatening, unwelcome. The reason again lies deep within evolution. In the dark, the earliest humans who sensed threat survived longer than those who assumed comfort. Ancient knights belonged to predators. Hearing a rustle, feeling watched, expecting an intruder, these were instincts that preserved life. Better to fear a phantom and live than to dismiss a threat and be taken. The bias toward negative interpretation kept the lineage alive. Now, in our safe rooms, the bias remains. When the imagination supplies presence, it almost always dons the costume of danger. It is fascinating to observe how story and science weave together here. From the scientific perspective, this sensation is simply the echo of vigilant circuits interfering with shutdown. From the cultural perspective, it is doorway to other worlds. Yet both descriptions attempt to answer the same undeniable fact: when drifting into sleep, humans across every land at every era feel sometimes that they are not alone. One explanation names neurons, the other names shadows, but the experience itself is universal. For those who are shaken by the presence, reassurance is essential. To recognize the sensation as a trick of the nervous system is to quiet some of the fear. Knowledge unsheathes the terror, softening it, reminding us, no one is here, though it feels otherwise. For others, cultural or spiritual frameworks provide comfort. To imagine a protective ancestor or a guardian spirit transforms the threatening into the safe, the malicious into the guiding. Both science and story provide tools. The essential truth remains: no phantom will harm you, though your body trembles as if one were near. Clinical researchers studying this phenomenon have even been able to reproduce it under certain conditions. By stimulating specific regions of the brain regions responsible for mapping the body in space, they have triggered the awareness of another figure standing near. The subjects, wide awake in a laboratory, turn suddenly, startled, convinced someone stands beside them. Yet no one is there. The illusion is so strong that even knowing it is a test does not dispel the conviction. What emerges from these tests is a remarkable insight: our sense of presence is not only outward-looking. It can be generated internally, woven from currents of our own neural maps, convincing us of companionship when none exists. There are testimonies from individuals who have come to embrace these experiences, transforming fear into awe. Some describe using the presence as inspiration for art, painting shadowy figures that are neither entirely sinister nor entirely benign. Writers have turned the experiences into ghost stories, giving literature to the feelings many recognize but few speak aloud. Spiritual traditions consider them opportunities to confront fear, sitting with the sensation until it dissipates, learning to remain calm in the face of invisible company. Over time, this can reshape the terror into curiosity, the dread into acceptance. Yet beneath all interpretations lies the awe-inspiring fact that the human mind can create sensations of other beings from nothing. This capacity reveals not only the creativity of the brain but the centrality of social awareness. We are built to live among others, to sense their watch, to feel their closeness. Even in perfect solitude our minds crave and expect company, fabricating it rather than surrendering to emptiness. The sense of presence in the hypnagogic state is, in a way, the ultimate testament to how profoundly social humans are. So much so that even in sleep, even in silence, even in emptiness, we invent companions. Consider the scene again: you lie in darkness with arms at rest, every object in the room familiar, nothing disturbed. The hallway is still, the window closed, no sound but your own breath. And still, your nerves prickle, your heart beats quicker, and in that silence another figure seems to wait. It is not mistake to feel afraid. Yet allow yourself to breathe with the knowledge that nothing can befall you. It is only the echo of vigilance, the flare of imagination. Allow the presence to linger without resistance, watch it dissolve as sleep claims you. Often, when you stop fighting, when you stop clinging to the idea of danger, the phantom dissolves sooner, carried away with the last scraps of waking awareness. Across the world, countless voices could echo yours, recounting the same invisible visitor. They are proof that you are not haunted uniquely, not cursed, not broken. You are human. That is enough explanation. What you feel tonight is what has been felt for ages, from the earliest caves where hunters lay trembling at shadows, to the crowded cities where students writing late slip into drowsiness and sense someone standing over their shoulder, to the quiet rural bedrooms where silence grows so deep that phantoms come to fill it. Each in their own time, in their own form, has encountered the weight of another's presence in empty air. And so, as the current of narration carries you deeper, let this feeling be known for what it truly is, a natural, universal step upon the ladder of sleep. The shadow is not an intruder, it is the mind's own mirror. The presence that stirs the pulse is made within you, by you, and dissolves as you accept its nature. When it arrives, you may meet it with gentle knowledge, you may let it pass, and you may then surrender more fully to the stillness of night. Sleep is, after all, a rehearsal of letting go of control, of vigilance, of the endless guard we keep during waking hours. These presences, whether terrifying or benign, are not hindrances but rehearsals of that letting go. They whisper, will you trust, will you surrender, will you enter? With each breath, you answer yes, and their whispers fade. Thus the journey continues, step by step, presence by presence, deeper into rest. As the silent sense of presence fades, loosening its grasp and leaving only the slow rhythm of breath and the weight of warmth upon the body, another phenomenon emerges to haunt the threshold of sleep. It comes not with shadow shapes or imagined intruders, but with the soft intimacy of sound. You lie half dissolved in stillness, eyes closed, nerves folding into silence, when suddenly a voice rings out. It may whisper with startling clarity, or it may call your name as if from just across the room. You turn inward, startled, for the voice is familiar. It may be the sound of a parent, long gone but instantly recognized. It may be the voice of a lover or a friend, someone whose tone is so deeply woven into the fabric of your life that even the nerves of your inner ear know it. And yet the room is empty, and the night is silent, and the person is nowhere near. The mind, as it closes its gates, sometimes leaves doors ajar. The regions of language, memory, and recognition do not all shut down at once. Somewhere between one breath and another, the auditory system whispers to itself. Bits of stored voices, echoes of words long spoken, seep up into consciousness. They are as real as any external utterance. Not imagined, not daydreamed, but heard fully, startlingly heard. The body reacts as it would to real sound. Heart quickens, head lifts, ears strain. And yet there is nothing. The phenomenon carries with it a peculiar emotional weight because of its familiarity. We are not shocked merely by noise, but by recognition. The brain does not conjure a stranger's tone, it calls forth the voices we know best. Why is this so? Science suggests that when the language networks slow, they sometimes misfire, releasing fragments of stored auditory memory. The brain, in its economy, chooses what is most resonant, most meaningful, most familiar. In evolutionary terms, to hear one's name uttered is to perceive attention, importance, sometimes warning. The auditory hallucination of your own name is thus not random but deeply wired. It is a way the brain tests itself in the fragile corridor between waking and sleep. For some, it happens rarely, a gentle oddity remembered only faintly the next morning. For others, especially those under stress or anxiety, it recurs with stubborn regularity. A mother hears her child call from another room though the child sleeps. A student living away from home hears the soft voice of a parent urging them. A partner feels sure their loved one has called, only to turn and find them resting silently. These experiences can be unsettling not only for their realism but for the lurking suggestion, why this voice, why now, what message lies within it? Cultures across the world have offered interpretations. In many traditions, to hear one's name whispered in silence is a spiritual summons. Folklore tells of souls calling to one another across distances or of ancestors offering reminders. In other places, the voice is seen as an omen, a signal from realms unseen. And even in modern times, when science places the explanation upon neurons and memory fragments, people still pause when it happens. The weight of intimacy within the sound challenges dismissal. How can a memory be so clear that it mimics reality perfectly? The hallucinatory call often carries no context. The voice says your name, nothing more. The brevity makes it striking, as though whoever spoke needed no explanation. The power lies in that single note of direct address, you. To be named is to be pulled back into the world when you are on the verge of leaving it. Sleep is a surrender of individuality into dream's infinite stage, but your name calls you back, anchors you for a brief moment, insists on recognition of self. Then, as you realize the room is empty, you drift again, but with a pulse of awareness that lingers. There are, too, reports of whole phrases being heard, as though conversations continue when the speaker is gone. These phrases are often fragmentary, drawn from memory or stitched together from familiar tones. Some are benign, a friend's cheerful word. Some are tender, a loved one offering comfort. But others can be stern, cold, or urgent, leaving the listener shivering with unease. In every case, the voice is undeniable, perfectly carrying the accent, intonation, and rhythm of the remembered speaker. The mind, when it hallucinates, does not do so vaguely. It paints in full fidelity. Neurological studies suggest that the phenomenon is closely related to the way memory stores language. Words are not preserved only as meaning but as sound, rich with timbre and cadence. When fragments are released in the half-sleep state, they play like recordings, not scripts. The authenticity is what makes it haunting. We are listening to ourselves rehearing what has already been heard. Nothing new is created, rather, what is archived is replayed without our consent. The accuracy astonishes us, giving the sense of outside presence when it is only the echo chamber of our own cortex. And still, knowledge does not erase the uncanny. To hear one's mother's gentle call though she is miles away touches emotions ancient and deep. To hear the laughter of a friend who has passed away feels like reunion. Some describe the experience with gratitude, cherishing the momentary return of a voice they feared lost forever. Others find it unbearable, the reminder too sharp, the absence after too cruel. Thus, the same phenomenon carries comfort or sorrow according to the thread of personal memory it pulls. The brain, impartial, offers the sound, the heart interprets it according to its own wounds and joys. Think of how universal the motif of the calling voice is in literature and mythology. The sirens call across the sea, ghosts summon the living by name, gods speak in whispers that no one else hears. All of these may find root in the simple neurological fact that people, as they fall into sleep, sometimes hear voices that are not there. Our shared experiences at night seed the myths of generations. Every tale of a voice from beyond, every legend of warning or prophecy, may be a reflection of millions of private moments when individuals in quiet rooms heard their names spoken out of nothing. And yet we can learn to live with these echoes calmly. Just as with the sudden fall or the invisible presence, the auditory hallucinations are harmless, natural outgrowths of a brain moving between states. When the voice calls, no action is required. It needs no answer, no fear, no rush from the bed in search of the source. It is enough to acknowledge, to breathe, to let it fade. In doing so, you teach the nervous system to move smoothly past its own sparks. There are accounts of those who welcome the voices, even cultivate them. They rest quietly, hoping to hear the whisper of a loved one, treating it as a nightly visitation. Some view it as a space where imagination and reality share words, a liminal conversation between self and memory. It is possible to transform the experience from threat into blessing, from confusion into wonder. By shifting interpretation, what unsettles one person brings serenity to another. Imagine, then, the scene of your own body sinking deeper tonight. Your breathing is slow, the sheets soft against skin, the darkness growing thicker. Without warning, a voice cuts through, calling your name, so gently, so clearly, as though a friend leans at your shoulder. You startle, then smile, then allow it to vanish as you slip further down. There is nothing here to harm. There is only the mysterious richness of a brain that stores every sound, every name, every accent, and sometimes, as you step into sleep, plays them again as if to remind you of all the lives you belong to. How strange and yet how human it is that our deepest sense of solitude, the act of surrendering to unconsciousness, is accompanied by illusions of companionship. We see presences in empty rooms, we hear names in silence, we feel hands where none lie. Perhaps this is the essence of being human, never alone, even in the silence of the mind. Our brains will not let us go unguided into sleep, they follow us there, dressing the emptiness with voices and forms. So listen quietly. If your name should call, do not alarm. If a voice you love speaks from behind your closed eyes, let it echo and drift away. With each phantom whisper you are carried further, deeper, into the ocean of night, leaving the familiar world of sound for the boundless continent of dream. The voice fades, the presence dissolves, the shadows vanish, and all that remains is your breath, your heartbeat, and the vast mystery of sleep unfolding. As the voices fade into silence and you sink deeper into the layers of night, there comes another moment, no less astonishing, no less strange. It begins with an odd sensation in the body, subtle at first, then creeping toward something entirely unworldly. Your breathing is slow, your muscles heavy, and yet you begin to feel light, as though weight itself were no longer fixed to your flesh. The warmth of the bed still presses gently against your skin, but somewhere deeper you sense detachment. It is as if your body is one thing, and you, the awareness that inhabits it, are another. Slowly, the certainty of where you exist begins to dissolve, until, with a sudden strangeness, you feel yourself floating just beyond the rim of your own skin. The experience can be disorienting, exhilarating, or terrifying. Some describe it as seeing themselves from above, looking down at their sleeping form as if the self were a traveler leaving the vessel behind. Others feel less visual clarity but an undeniable conviction that their consciousness has slipped loose, hovering at the edges of their body, no longer bound to the same coordinates of space. The sensation is not always sustained. Sometimes it lasts only seconds, other times it grows into long drifting perceptions that weave into dreams. And whether you linger outside yourself or merely feel the tug of detachment, the strangeness leaves its mark. You awaken and wonder, what part of me was it that floated, and what part stayed behind? This phenomenon is often called an out-of-body experience, and it arises most frequently at the threshold between waking and sleep. Neurologically, it is tied to the way the brain maps the body in space. Ordinarily, your sense of position is steady, anchored by signals from balance organs in the inner ear, by touch receptors in the skin, by the integration of sight and limb position in the brain. But as sleep approaches, those signals can go out of sync. The equilibrium loosens, the body schema wavers, and suddenly awareness is cut adrift. Without clear input, the brain offers a new perspective, projecting the self into space as if untethered. The experience may feel supernatural, yet it is born from the fragility of the ordinary process of orientation. And yet, across cultures and ages, this sensation has fueled some of the most powerful myths of humanity. From ancient shamans who spoke of soul journeys, flying above the earth to commune with spirits, to mystics who described their essence leaving the body in prayer, to modern seekers who call it astral projection and treat it as proof of existence beyond the flesh, all of them share the same spine of experience, the feeling of floating free. What neuroscience calls a misalignment of body maps, others interpret as transcendence. Each interpretation colors the experience with its own awe, but regardless of frame, those who endure it seldom forget the intensity. Some people find this sensation to be liberating. They describe a deep calm pooling through them as they drift just beyond their body. They report that fear falls away as if they were flying, weightless, timeless, moving without effort. One person recalls hovering at ceiling level, looking down upon their resting form and feeling no dread, only serenity, as though existence itself were clarified by this separation. Another tells of floating farther still, slipping beyond the room into dreamlike landscapes, eventually pulling back and waking with tears of wonder. For them, the proof is not in measurement but in how vividly their consciousness preserved the memory. Others encounter dread. The thought of being separate from the body is deeply unsettling. For those raised in cultures that equate separation with death, the floating becomes a kind of rehearsal of mortality. Some awaken panicked, convinced they almost left permanently, convinced that something had gone wrong in the fragile machinery of sleep. Terror leaks into waking life, as they fear the return of this unmooring. Their stories, recorded in medical journals and folklore alike, show the dual nature of the experience. It can be blissful transcendence or paralyzing horror, depending on interpretation and temperament. Scientific research has attempted to reproduce these states under controlled conditions. Experiments stimulating certain regions of the brain have occasionally induced the sensation of leaving the body. Virtual reality setups combining mismatched sensory cues, for example, showing a camera's view as if from behind the participant while touching them in synchrony, can create the powerful illusion that the self has shifted outside the body. These experiments demonstrate conclusively that the experience, though intense, is rooted in the malleability of our sense of self in space. It is not a mystical departure but a neurological one. And yet, knowing this does not erase the awe of living it firsthand. What is most remarkable is how convincingly real these sensations are. Unlike transient hallucinations of sound or vision, the floating sensation involves the entire body. You feel gravity lose its grip. You feel limbs move apart from you. You perceive vantage points impossible in waking life. The completeness of the sensory illusion convinces you utterly in the moment, leaving only questions after awakening. If it is all an illusion, why does it feel more perfect than reality itself? If it is only neurons, why does it alter lives with such power? The boundary between perception and existence blurs when the whole self becomes negotiable. In dreams, we fly easily, but in these hypnagogic detachments there is something harder to dismiss. Dreams erase awareness, but here awareness remains, watching the impossible unfold. That is what gives it its uncanny power. You are there, witnessing. You are lucid enough to remember details, yet powerless to control them. For some, this lucidity makes them believe they have discovered another layer of reality, some hidden plane where self is not bound by body. For others, it makes them cautious of the fragility of their own consciousness, wary of how easily it bends and shifts. Accounts spill across human history. Religious texts speak of prophets carried outside themselves in visions of night. Shamans recall flying to receive guidance for their tribes. Ordinary people in quiet bedrooms report hovering a few feet above, unable to grasp what is real. Modern surveys show that a notable portion of the population experiences some form of out-of-body detachment at least once in life. It is not rare, but it is deeply private, often unspoken, for fear of dismissal or misunderstanding. To share it is to confess that for a moment the self itself broke loose. Yet perhaps such confessions are vital. They remind us that consciousness is not fixed map but flowing river. It can twist, split, rise, fall. The out-of-body state is not error but revelation. It shows that the I we so firmly claim has dimensions we do not always inhabit. For a moment, we live in two places, the weight of the body below and the flight of awareness above. Even if science explains every neuron, the subjective wonder cannot be erased. As with other hypnagogic experiences, there are ways to approach this without fear. If you accept it, if you remember that you remain safe in bed, you can allow yourself to drift. You can map the experience not as horror but as exploration. You can enter it with curiosity, wondering what your mind will paint, what vantage it will show. And when you return, waking with heart steady, you can remind yourself you were never truly separate. The body was always there. The floating self only roamed through inner landscapes. Both belong to you. So tonight, should you feel a loosening, a gentle slipping of weight, treat it not as danger but as mystery. If the walls of space tremble and you think you hover beyond your skin, let it carry you. It will not last, but while it does you will glimpse how fragile and flexible the sense of self can be. When it ends, you rejoin your body, as if nothing changed. Yet inside you will remain the knowledge that your reality is not as narrow as it seemed. For in sleep, we learn again and again that boundaries do not hold, and that consciousness is far wider, stranger, and more beautiful than our daylight thoughts allow. And as you continue to sink, let this possibility rest lightly. You are safe. You are whole. Whether near or floating beyond, whether tied or drifting loose, you remain yourself carried through the endless waters of night. The dream awaits deeper still, and this gentle rehearsal of release prepares you for it. One breath, then the next, and you travel ever further inward. Time, the relentless thread binding the hours of our days, does not flow in the same way when we drift into the borders of sleep. In waking life, we measure it with clocks, with schedules, with the sun rising and setting across the sky. Yet when we lie in darkness with eyes heavy, the sense of order loosens. Minutes become slippery, stretching and collapsing in ways that defy reason. Perhaps you have laid your head down, closed your eyes for what feels like a few fleeting breaths, only to discover that long hours have passed. Or perhaps you have surrendered to slumber for an entire night, yet when you finally return to light, you are convinced only a moment has slipped by. In these delicate corridors of half sleep and dream, time no longer obeys human rules. This distortion often announces itself most vividly just as you are on the edge of drifting away. You lie watching the images of hypnagogia flicker, you hear the phantom voice, you feel the float of your own body. In this liminal place, the ordinary rhythm of seconds can suddenly expand. A moment of drowsiness stretches wide as a plain, containing a whole procession of thoughts and visions. The brain, shifting into its slower patterns of waves, no longer counts the steady ticks of external reality. Instead, it builds its own measure, flowing in loops and surges. This is why 5 minutes of drifting can seem like an hour's wandering, and an hour of sleep can feel like only a blink. Within dreams the distortion grows dramatic. A dream narrative unfolding with the richness of an entire novel may occupy only a few minutes of real time. You may travel cities, speak with dozens of people, feel the rise and fall of complex storylines, only to wake and find barely half an hour has left the clock. The impression is not false, our minds truly experience events in extended form, but the rhythm is compressed, unbound from the metronome of seconds. The waves of the sleeping brain carry us at different speeds, sometimes glacial, sometimes furious, and consciousness adapts effortlessly. Scientists studying the mysteries of sleep have noted how our internal sense of time is tied to the oscillations of the brain. In wakefulness, the beta and gamma waves provide a steady stream of coordination, calibrating us to reality. But as drowsiness deepens into alpha and then theta rhythms, the steadiness wavers. In that altered tempo, time slips its leash. The body's biological clocks continue to keep order internally, regulating hormones and cycles, but conscious awareness is freed to experience duration in wildly altered ways. To the dreamer, the construct is as real as waking minutes, and so the elasticity is accepted without protest. The strangeness of this distortion shows itself again upon awakening. Many have experienced the uncanny knowledge of the exact moment when they will wake, as though an inner clock roused them without external cause. You may wake a minute before your alarm, not once or twice but repeatedly, as though your body carries a mysterious chronometer that answers to no machine. The truth lies in the ongoing conversation between circadian rhythms, memory, and expectation. If, before sleeping, you implant the idea that you must rise at a certain hour, the sleeping brain does not forget. It organizes its waves and hormones to prepare. Cortisol levels rise just before the intended time, nudging you awake, producing the uncanny impression that you command hours even in unconsciousness. In this way, time distortion becomes not only a matter of illusion but of hidden precision. For many, time in dreams is colored by emotion. Fear extends time, stretching moments until they seem endless, while joy compresses, making hours flash by in instants. Just as in waking life, when a terrifying second can feel an eternity, and blissful hours with loved ones pass too quickly, so too do dreams echo the same modulation. The emotional brain, dominant in REM sleep, drags time around with it. A nightmare of only 3 minutes may traumatize with the weight of hours. A delightful fantasy of companionship may feel like it lasted a timeless season. You awaken with memory, but the clock disagrees, and the disagreement deepens the mystery. Cultural tales again blossom from this peculiar ground. In countless myths, humans fall asleep for what they think is a night, only to awaken centuries later. In folklore, enchanted sleep carries the illusion of seconds while the world grows old outside. These tales reflect our intuitive recognition of the elastic quality of time within slumber. Sleeping Beauty closed her eyes for a moment and opened them to an altered kingdom. Rip Van Winkle thought he napped only briefly but returned to find decades gone. These cultural stories are exaggerations, yet rooted in genuine nightly experiences of distorted duration. If you observe your own nights closely, you may notice patterns. Sometimes you awake from rich, elaborate dreams believing you have slept for hours, only to see barely half an hour had slipped away. At other times you lie down for what seems like a quick nap and wake groggy, astonished that half a day has disappeared. How strange to think that all of this happens under the constancy of time's true flow, which has not bent at all. Only perception flexes, showing how subjective the experience of existence truly is. There are moments, too, of timelessness, when neither speed nor slowness apply. These often come in the hypnagogic transition, when your body is sinking but not yet lost, when hallucinations flicker and presences hover. In that soft border, you may lose all sense of before and after. Thoughts arise without sequence, sensations carry no duration, and the entire space of consciousness is now. A single breath is eternal, stretching without span. Here the boundaries of time seem irrelevant, as though the mind, freed from clocks and rotations, slips into the vastness of being itself. People who practice meditation know this sensation deeply, for it mirrors the timelessness sought in deep contemplative states. The practice of intentionally dwelling in the stream of consciousness without judgment is, in fact, not so different from drifting into sleep, save that in meditation you remain more fully poised. The paradox of time distortion is that it both unsettles and comforts. We fear it because it reveals how fragile our sense of order is. If hours compress into moments, how can we trust our memories? If seconds expand into eternity, what other illusions bind us? Yet we also find solace in it, for when rest is true and sleep is deep, long hours of needed repair can feel instant to us. What might feel like timeless stillness is in fact our bodies hard at work, restoring, healing, organizing. Time freed from attention becomes gift, unconscious rest that seems to steal no slice of life, since for us it lasted only a blink. Some report experiences of prophecy woven through this timelessness. To wake just before an earthquake, to sense the exact moment of dawn, to anticipate the return of a loved one, these are given mystical interpretation. But behind them may lie nothing supernatural, only the exquisite sensitivity of a mind half in sleep, attuned to rhythms imperceptible in wake. The shape of light beneath eyelids may tell the body dawn has come. The vibrations of earth, imperceptible while busy, may reach a vulnerable nervous system and be woven into a sense of duration. What results is the conviction of timeless prophecy, when in truth the body has simply listened more closely. Still, whether scientific or mystical, the feeling remains extraordinary. When you live through an hour that feels like a lifetime or a night that passes in a second, you stand at the edge of perception's truth. For every person who has ever jolted awake believing they overslept only to find scarcely any minutes gone, you join an ancient brotherhood of minds amazed by their own illusions. These stories endure not because they are rare, but because they are common enough to touch almost every human being, yet strange enough to bewilder us. What would it mean if our inner perception of time could be harnessed? Could we stretch seconds to feel hours in the safety of sleep, gifting ourselves endless experiences in short duration? Could we compress anxiety-ridden time into smaller spans, relieving suffering? For now these are questions lingering on the horizon of science. But every night as we lie down, we practice the art ourselves, unbidden, slipping into distorted rivers of moments where the rules of day no longer apply. And so, as you listen now, notice your own dilation of time. Already, perhaps, the minutes of this narration have stretched far, looping back upon themselves, giving the impression of longer span than they occupy. Already, the measured ticks of a clock may seem remote. This in itself is a small taste of the phenomenon. The soothing rhythm of words lulls you, so that duration grows strange. And as you sink deeper into rest, you will surrender the measuring mind entirely until only the rhythms of your body remain, whispering their ancient cycles beyond your control. When at last you awaken, you may wonder whether an hour has passed or 10, whether you drifted for moments or eternities. Both answers may seem true at once, for in the world of sleep time bends without apology. The distortion is not flaw, but gift, another brushstroke in the vast mural of nocturnal mystery. To enter it with trust is to accept that the self is not bound by rigid clocks but is a fluid consciousness adrift in tides far older than human hours. Let the tides carry you now. Time is no longer enemy nor master. Time is only the soft current bearing you deeper into dream. When you have drifted through sensations of floating, of time bending itself into strange elastic shapes, there still remain other phenomena, quieter perhaps, but no less uncanny. They are not always grand or overwhelming. Sometimes they are subtle, tiny distortions of sense, fleeting glitches in the machinery of perception. And yet, when they appear, they remind you of how fragile the boundary between waking and sleeping truly is. Each one is like a ripple along the surface of night, a reminder that the mind never turns fully off but reshapes itself endlessly in the passage downward. One of the most familiar of these is the sudden feeling that your phone, tucked in a pocket or sitting nearby, has vibrated. You reach for it, convinced a message has arrived. Yet the screen is blank, and no notification has disturbed the calm. This phantom vibration can strike not only in wakefulness but also in the drifting state before sleep. As you lie still, attuned to subtle shifts in your body, the nerves conjure the faint buzzing of a device you have carried for so long that it feels like an extension of yourself. It is the modern ghost touch, born out of habit and expectation rather than superstition. The brain learns patterns of anticipation, and when signals fall silent it invents them. At the edge of sleep, as external inputs fade, this invention becomes even easier, as though the body itself rattles with a silent call no one made. Another nighttime oddity comes in the form of spontaneous speech. A person drowsing upon the cusp of sleep may murmur, mutter, or even shout words with no conscious intent. These fragments are often nonsense, chains of syllables assembled without structure, but sometimes they form full, coherent lines of dialogue, as though an unseen script has slipped across the tongue. Listeners might laugh, startled by the sudden eruption of noise from someone nearly asleep. But to the sleeper, no memory remains. These episodes of sleep talking begin as the language systems surrender control, spilling loose threads of thought into voiced expression. It is as if the brain, unwilling to bear them quietly, hands those fragments to the mouth as gifts to the darkness. More curious still are those who in their drowsy state find their hands restless, sketching unconscious shapes or scribbling words half-formed. Automatic writing has been reported both in scientific study and spiritual accounts, ranging from meaningless loops to structured phrases. For some, it is merely the motor system, twitching like the legs in those sudden jerks long earlier in the night. For others, it feels like something greater, as if an unseen hand moved through their own. Cultures have long interpreted such acts as channels for spirits or guides, while psychologists consider them living proof that creativity can well up without control. Whatever the interpretation, the scribbles upon paper stand as testimony that even the drowsy mind is restless, producing despite the surrender of will. And taste too may falter in this twilight state. Some describe the sudden sharp tang of metal upon the tongue, the sweetness of fruit that is not there, a bitterness that rises from nowhere. These taste hallucinations can be jarring, especially because they break into the most intimate sense of nourishment. To savor a flavor while no food has touched the mouth is disorienting, a crack in the familiar chain of cause and effect. Scientists explain it as still another misfire of sensory mapping, the gustatory cortex pinging without stimulus, offering phantom meals to those who drift. Like voices and visions, flavors join the parade of illusions on the road to sleep. And then there are changes in temperature, phantom waves of heat or chill cascading through the body. One moment the skin flushes, burning, as though a sudden fever rose. The next moment, shivers pull across the spine with no draft in the room. These shifts may last seconds, or longer, leaving sleepers kicking off blankets then clutching them again. The nervous system, oscillating between waking metabolism and sleeping conservation, sometimes miscalculates its balance. The result is a cascade of heat and cold divorced from the external environment. The experience reminds us again that behind our sense of reality stands a body always interpreting, and sometimes confused. When you consider all of these together, a pattern emerges. Hypnagogia is not about one symptom or another, not just about falling or presences or voices, but about the wider truth that the brain does not walk smoothly into night. It stumbles, twitches, invents. It tests its systems in flashes, often leaving the sleeper bewildered. The phantom vibration, the unexpected words, the sour taste or shocking chill, all are moments when two states overlap, waking and sleeping colliding. They are not signs of dysfunction but markers that you are alive, that your neural orchestra is still tuning, uncertain yet committed to continue. For centuries, such phenomena were treated as omens or messages. A word blurted in half-sleep could be taken as prophecy. A scribble produced by drowsy hands might be studied as sacred text. A sudden cold rush might be explained as the brush of a ghost. In the absence of scientific language, people wove meaning. Though today we can name neurotransmitters, limbic activations, cortex misfires, the strangeness remains. Because when lived subjectively, the experience feels like communication from elsewhere. Logic and science may explain the origin, but in those seconds before sleep, what matters is how it feels. Many who endure these things worry unnecessarily. They ask if something is wrong with them, if their minds are crumbling, if illness speaks through hallucination. The truth is gentler. These are ordinary byproducts of human neurology. Unless they become extreme or intrusive, they are not cause for fear. In fact, they are reminders of shared humanity. Every culture has names for them because every person has felt them. We belong to an infinite lineage of sleepers startled by voices, by shivers, by tastes and sounds that had no source. And in a way, they are not only harmless but gifts of perspective. They show that perception is never absolute, that reality is more malleable than we believe. To feel your phone buzz when it did not, to taste when you have not eaten, to hear when no one spoke, all of these remind you that the brain builds reality second by second. If it can twist so easily at night, how strange it is that we trust it so firmly by day. Perhaps the lesson of these small hallucinations is humility, a reminder that our experience is subjective story, one the brain tells with conviction whether supported by external cause or not. So, as you sink further into tonight's calm, if your body twitches words into the air, if your skin shivers with phantom drafts, if your tongue swells with flavors that do not exist, do not startle. These are not warnings, they are footnotes, annotations to the grand story of sleep. They whisper, you are changing states, you are in passage, you are balanced upon the border. Each is the mind's little ritual of transition, as certain and harmless as closing eyes in darkness. Accept them, marvel at them, then let them carry you. Over time, you may even grow fond of these quirks. They are like the peculiar creaks of an old house settling at night. You no longer fear them, you recognize their familiarity. The phantom voice, the phantom taste, the phantom shiver, they are reminders that you are not a machine but a living creature, complex, unpredictable, carrying within you the whole history of evolution. They are proof that to be human is to experience more than reality grants, to carry illusion stitched into your senses. And as you breathe more slowly now, guided by the gentle current of words, remember that the strangeness has nothing sinister at its root. It is simply you, your brain, your body, preparing itself for the deeper dive. Soon all these flickers will vanish into the unified sea of dream. For now, they visit like small waves breaking against shore. Welcome them, let them pass, and allow yourself to drift onward, farther, deeper, into the infinite night. After traveling through the landscapes of falling sensations, sudden explosions of phantom sound, strange voices that are not there, presences that hover unseen, visions that blur the real with the imagined, journeys beyond one's own body, distortions of time that turn minutes into hours, and the quiet illusions of taste, touch, vibration, and shifting temperature, we arrive together at the end of our exploration. It has been a journey not only into the science of the brain but into the poetry of human experience itself. Each step has revealed something hidden, something barely acknowledged in daylight, yet shared by nearly everyone who has ever closed their eyes at night. What does it mean, then, to have such experiences? Should we be afraid of them, ashamed of them, fascinated by them? The answer is gentler and more profound than fear would allow. These phenomena are not curses, not warnings of madness, not signs that something inside you is broken. Rather, they are the natural reflections of a brain in transition. To fall asleep is not to flip a switch. It is an elaborate orchestration of rhythms, systems, and senses, each shutting down in its own time, flickering as it fades. The oddities we have explored together are simply the sparks, the afterglows, the small fireworks of consciousness giving way to rest. Consider the fear that so often accompanies these moments. The plunge into nothingness that wakes you with a twitch, the thunder without storm, the shadow that feels like an intruder, the voice that calls your name, the body that floats away from itself. These experiences shake us because we instinctively guard our borders. We want waking life to be firm and predictable. But what we forget is that looseness, unpredictability, and change are not failures. They are the very texture of being alive. And sleep, every night, is a chance to practice yielding to them. Science offers reassurance. It tells us that hypnic jerks, exploding head noises, auditory illusions, time distortions, and all the rest are normal. They are not diseases. They do not mark permanent dysfunction. They are artifacts of transition, experienced by most humans at one time or another. Studies show that the majority of people, perhaps 70% or more, know at least one of these strange events firsthand. You are not strange in having them. Stranger, perhaps, would be never to experience the oddness at all. When, then, should concern arise? Only rarely. If hallucinations persist into full waking hours, if sleep paralysis becomes overwhelming and frequent, if rest is constantly shattered by dread, then perhaps medical guidance is useful. But for nearly all, these events live harmlessly in the space between days. Knowing this is powerful. Knowledge loosens fear. The next time you feel your body fall, the next time phantom thunder shakes your head, you will remember, this is not danger. This is simply my mind reshaping itself on the road into sleep. There is another truth hidden here, softer than science, closer to art. These nightly mysteries remind us that our inner lives are vast. Each ordinary person carries within them the capacity for wonder greater than any machine, any screen, any entertainment. You, lying in bed in darkness, without stimulus, without distraction, already inhabit a theater of infinite strangeness. Within you live voices, landscapes, presences, and sensations that can appear without request. To notice them is to rediscover what it means to be conscious, not merely to measure reality, but to create it. And so, perhaps, the healthiest way to approach these experiences is neither to fear them nor to worship them, but to recognize them as part of the fabric of existence. The voices, the presences, the explosions, they are not foreign invaders. They are threads in the human pattern, woven into us by evolution, culture, and imagination. They serve no malice. They harm no one. They simply appear, ripple the surface of awareness, and pass away. To welcome them gently, to observe them like clouds, is to live at peace with your own mind. What, then, can one do to ease the path, to soften the jolts, to make the nightly descent into sleep smoother? Small practices, grounded in kindness toward the body, help most. Keep caffeine from late hours. Allow your muscles a chance to stretch gently before bed. Breathe with calm intention, letting your body know no threat lurks nearby. Build a routine of slowness before sleep, soft sounds, quiet voices, warm light fading to dark. These are the signals the nervous system craves, reminders that safety surrounds, that no alarm is needed. With these rituals, the phenomena we fear soften. They may still appear, for their roots are deep, but they no longer grip us with panic. They are acknowledged, and they pass. It may even help to transform them into curiosity. Instead of recoiling, observe. The next time you feel a phantom vibration, think, how incredible that my body can echo machines it has known. The next time you hear your name whispered, pause in wonder, how detailed, how perfect, my own memory is to reproduce such sound. The next time you feel a presence, ask, what does it mean that even alone, I invent companions? Through such reflection, what was once terror becomes intimacy. You become a student of your own consciousness. And so the conclusion of this journey is not a closed door but an open one. We set out to understand the strange things that happen when you are almost asleep, but what we have found is more than explanation. We have found testimony to the profound creativity of the brain, to its layers of vigilance, memory, and invention. We have found reassurance in the universality of these experiences. We have found awe in the reminder that human life is richer than daylight reveals. Tonight, and every night, when you lie down, you may remember these truths. If visions come, let them. If presences linger, greet them. If sounds erupt, allow them to fade. They are all parts of an ancient, universal ritual, the passage from waking into sleep. To endure them is not a flaw. To endure them is to be human. And as you rest now, carried deeper by voice and breathing, let go of every question. Let go of the boundaries of time, of sound, of form. Surrender to the grand mystery, the ocean of unconsciousness that waits beyond all phenomena. For here, beyond falling and floating, beyond whispers and shadows, lies the simple gift of rest. Your body repairs itself. Your mind organizes and restores. Your spirit drifts in dreams beyond measure. The strangeness was only the threshold, beyond the threshold is peace. So may you carry with you the comfort that nothing you have felt at the edge of sleep is abnormal. Nothing you have feared is dangerous. All of it belongs to you, to humanity, to the shared heritage of billions who close their eyes each night and wander across the same unseen bridges. Embrace the mystery of your own mind, not with dread but with reverence. And when morning comes, and you rise with the sun, you will carry into the day the quiet certainty that your nights, though strange, are perfectly natural, perfectly human, and perfectly your own. Thank you, dear listener, for joining me in this long and gentle exploration. It has been an honor to guide you across the twilight borders of consciousness. Know that you are not alone in your experiences, for we all share these nightly passages together. May your dreams tonight be calm, may your sleep be deep, and may your heart find rest in the wonder of simply being alive. Until we meet again, good night.